Hey, welcome back to Tiger Drop Films. Today I'm going to discuss the 2004 film Ultraman The Next, and why I find it to be my treasured Ultraman film. The Next was directed by Kazuya Konaka, a man who also directed two other Ultraman films that pull at my heartstrings. Those two films being Ultraman Tiga and Dyna, Warriors of the Star of Light, and Ultraman Gaia, Battle in Hyperspace. I firmly believe that Mr. Konaka understands the real appeal of Ultraman, in the sense of what makes the concept and world of the character resonate with viewers around the world. To elaborate, he brings Ultraman down to earth with each of the three films I mentioned. It's captivating and compelling how Mr. Konaka's direction is able to return to the series with a fresh take each and every time. The Next was written by Kiichi Hasegawa, a scriptwriter Ultraman fans will know for the Tiga finale, Dyna's opening two-parter, and notably, Dyna's film, Gaia's film, and Tiga the Final Odyssey. Oh, and he wrote two Mebius films. Sensing a pattern here, see the majority, not all, of the projects I listed were directed by Kazuya Konaka and written by Kiichi Hasegawa. So it's safe to say that the other driving force behind a good portion of the Heisei Ultraman that saw rebirth in the franchise can be credited to Hasegawa as well. Or I should say, in the context of the Next in this video, I wanted to point out how two key positions in telling a film's narrative ended up in Konaka and Hasegawa working together in the Ultraman franchise quite a few times. Most of these examples being Ultraman films or show finales that are fondly remembered by fans, and adored for genuine reasons that really do warrant well-deserved praise. So without further ado, let's discuss how Ultraman The Next tells a personal story that remakes the very first episode of the original Ultraman. In a world that's never seen kaiju nor seijin before, a fighter pilot named Tsugumu Maki tells his best friend Tsuyoshi Kirishima that he decides to retire from his dream so he can spend time with his ill son Tsugumu, who has a congenital blood disease. We learn that he's a family man deep down, wanting to spend precious time with his son and his wife Yoko. However, before Maki can retire, he's sent on an emergency mission to intercept an unknown flying object, leading to his encounter with a certain silver giant of light. While Maki survives the encounter of no memory as to what happened, he goes to live a more mundane job, while spending time with his wife and son, as the government watches him from the shadows. During this time, Maki makes a promise to Tsugumu that he'll take him flying one day once his condition improves. For right now, it's hitting a low point. This is what drives Maki for the rest of the film. However, he is kidnapped by the government when a mysterious woman corners him. Her name is Sarah Musuhara, who works for the government as a chemical weapons specialist. She serves as a major supporting character that is mysterious at first, who then eases the audience into the conflict as much as it grows our interest into what exactly is going on. Essentially, she kidnaps Maki in fear that he's going to become a monster. Which brings me to the antagonist of the film, a creature called the One. No, the One. Okay, not that one. Yeah, this one. This is a space beast that bonded Takafumi Udo as a parasite. From the get-go, we get a human face for the monstrous antagonist, setting up an uneasy feeling for the audience. There's mystery behind the situation, and later on, the One turns into what is essentially Bimilar, the first kaiju seen in the Ultraman franchise, all the way back to that first original episode. I'd even say it's a mix of Jamila, too. After the first battle between the Next and the One, we learn that Udo is Sarah's fiancé. He came into contact with the One months ago, and he's turned into a body horror creature that calls upon nearby animals to absorb them and increase in size as well as power. So we get a new layer of depth into the film, where the antagonist has a personal connection to Sarah, and it's especially poignant when we get that montage of Sarah and Udo in love spending time together. is rather tragic because while Maki had the responsibility of the Silver Giant forced upon him, Sarah has lost Udo to a destructive force that's manipulated him into killing several people. It's also vague on whether or not Udo is even still alive, who could very well be the one using his body and voice in the confrontation underneath the city to mess with Sarah and Maki. Ultimately, Sarah realizes that Udo needs to be put out of his misery and only Maki can stop him. The heart of the next is Maki fulfilling his promise to his son and being there for his wife. There's a flashback around 52 minutes in where Maki is looking at a picture of his family and remembers a time he was running late to the hospital. Tsugumu was sleeping, but Maki finds his wife waiting for him. It's just the two of them as we hear rain outside the hospital. The scene has a melancholic memory. Yoko explains her realization of what it means to be a pilot's wife, bringing up the funeral of one of Maki's colleagues and how Tsugumu needs his father, especially because he's only 5 years old. Maki's drive to reunite with his family so he can fulfill his promise to his son and spend precious time is what I find so endearing about this film. It's personal, there's sorrow, and it feels so authentically real. Throughout the course of all storytelling, we've seen so many stories. And as I've grown older, I've come to appreciate the films and stories that genuinely speak to me and how veritable its humanity is. There's such thing as being too overdramatic, and there's such thing as surface level or disingenuous. But a film like The Next is none of those things. It's a legitimately human story. I don't need speeches that try to be Shakespeare, nor do I believe something silly that people call high art. Rather, something that manages to bring real experiences that makes a story very human is what I find myself coming back to the most. This is why I love the Ultraman franchise, because it blends the craziness of indomitable threats with real people, and all comes down to pure imagination. Ultraman The Next is truly about that. A father is forced to become the giant of light, so he can strike down the monster that threatens to take away the happiness of many others, including those close to him. It's very much a case of, sure, a villain can destroy the world, but if he destroys the people the hero cares about, then that is the real stake. But in order to overcome this threat that's also human in some way, Maki has to embrace his childhood dream of flying, so he can summon the will to finish his true last mission. Then he can fulfill his promise to his son, in other words, passing his dream down to his son. In the final moments of the film, when Maki and Tsugumu are flying, Tsugumu says he's going to become a pilot like his father when he grows up. Aw, it's adorable. And it's a nice little bow, because when the film opened, it was Tsugumu talking about his father. And since my essay covering Ultraman music was well received by you guys, I'll analyze the ending theme of the film, called Never Goodbye by the Tak Matsumoto Group. In John LeMay's A Big Book of Giant Monster Movies Volume 2, his coverage of The Next mentions how the filmmakers were inspired by the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. This makes sense considering Spider-Man 2 released in June of 2004, just 6 months before The Next. Besides the overall sunset cinematography of the films, the big connection here is ending the film with a rock song. Whether it's Hero by Nickelback or Vindicated by Dashboard Confessional, listening to Never Goodbye really reminds me of them. It's the kind of song that appears to be from the hero's perspective as somebody he loves and cares about. I like to describe it as icing on the cake, with the cake being a genuine superhero film and the icing being the bona fide song that fits the soul of the film as you meet the end credits. It's something only the early 2000s could accomplish, another example being Ang Lee's Hulk and Set Me Free. So I found myself going back to these early 2000s superhero ending songs because there's something altruistic about them, for they fit these hero-centric narratives, and that's what The Next is all about. Maki becoming Ultraman for a day, so he can get back to his family. That's why Maki acknowledging the feeling of flying in the finale is important. It works as both Maki truly living his childhood dream to fly a jet, and as Maki's true final mission before retirement. In a way, it's Maki getting to be a child again, as much as it is Maki living in the present as a man so he can get back to being a father and husband. Maki even states that defeating the evil one is his true final mission. Let's look back at Never Goodbye and these lyrics. And I'm going to play a verse I really like.
Inside this room, wrapped up in gold, hear you laughing, window to your soul. Wish I knew this place you're in. Take it in and let the sirens sing. Brace yourself for the very next one. Pressure, pressure, anything at all. Answer me slowly, is it right? Never so easy, I need you tonight. All in all, oh, don't say you're leaving. Don't say you're leaving the night. Don't leave the night. Stay on forever. Never goodbye.
Man, that was beautiful. Yeah, this song is sung in English, the vocals done by Eric Martin with lyrics by Jack Blades. So this was a super group formed by Tak Matsumoto himself, and I must say that Never Goodbye made me check out all their other projects. You can find the song in the album TMG1. So Tak Matsumoto composed the score for The Next, so I don't blame him for including an incredible song he helped create. I love this song. It encapsulates the heart of the film, and it forces the idea of wonder and Ultraman appearing when he's needed the most. And most importantly, it signifies a unison between Ultraman and Maki as they push through to defeat the One. For the sake of Tsugumu, Yoko, Sarah, and Kirishima, he'll complete his responsibility, so he won't have to say goodbye. An interesting fact I discovered was how both The Next and Shin Ultraman saved the iconic Rise sequence for the very final battle. The film's final battle is Ultraman at sunset. How much more perfect can you get? I also want to point out how the name Ultraman is only said twice in the entire film. Once by the reporter following the aftermath of the finale, where we learn that kids have named the giant Ultraman, and they hope he returns soon. The other is by Sarah when she thanks Ultraman as Maki flies into the sky with Tsugumu in the finale. I love how kids named Ultraman in this film, especially in a retelling that leans to a more adult-oriented story. In a way, it works for adults too, for now Sarah referred to The Next as a name he was given by kids. I see it as not only her now seeing Ultraman for who he genuinely is after he defeated the One and let Udo rest in peace, but maybe having that same wonder all those kids felt when they saw Ultraman save the day. And perhaps it proves that for everyone who is fearful of what threatens the world, well, Ultraman is someone you don't have to be scared of. He's just a guy doing his part, and he encourages you to be the next.
子供たちは今、謎の超人に憧れを込め、こう呼んでいます。ウルトラマンと。
いってらっしゃい。気をつけて。いってらっしゃい。うわー、すごい。僕本当に空飛んでる。 とうパパ、約束守ってくれて。
でもな、つぐむとの約束が守れたのはパパだけの力じゃないんだ。
え、誰のおかげなの？
この大空に帰っていったパパの友達。
友達？
子供の頃に憧れた銀色の流星だ。
ありがとうウルトラマン。
僕は飛行機に乗るお父さんが大好きです。僕も大人になったらお父さんみたいなパイロットになって空を飛んでみたいです。それが僕の夢です。
Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm grateful for all the feedback and views. Please check out my Ultraman playlist if you haven't seen my other essays. Thanks for watching and take care. Tiger Drop Films out, but I'll see you soon.